former Christian Coalition Executive Director Ralph Reed plotting to take back the White House for Republicans? He'll take on Democratic consultant James Carville straight ahead.
To the public, the political battle in Washington has become a distant spectacle with little relevance to their lives.
Why do Americans hate politics? Bill Schneider has the story behind the story.
I believe this high office requires more than being Senator Pothole.
High hopes for a capital future and the tale of a picture.
Actually, I liked it quite a lot, but I didn't think I was being photographed.
All the details in our political roundup.
The IRS will be auditing the taxes of Paula Corbin Jones. The White House says this is just a random audit, could have been anybody, and besides, she was asking for it.
And Mark Russell, all ahead.
From Washington, this is Inside Politics Weekend with Wolf Blitzer.
Thanks for joining us for our weekend look inside politics, the events, the issues, the battles, the bites. It's our last edition of Inside Politics Weekend, but we'll tell you more about that later. First, we turn our attention to the new year in politics and a look down the road to 2000. Joining me in Atlanta, Ralph Reed, the former executive director of the Christian Coalition, now a Republican consultant, and here in Washington, Democratic political consultant and presidential pal, James Carville. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us on this last historic edition of Inside Politics Weekend. Good to have both of you here.
I'm making a little history here tonight.
Next Saturday, James Carville, the president is scheduled to give a deposition in the Paula Jones case, and the word on the street is that Paula Jones herself is going to be at the White House for that deposition. That could make pretty lively sparks fly over there.
Well, you know, the truth, Matt, is that I guess she has a right to be there under the law, so she has that right to be there. The president's got, you know, his own things that he's dealing with, and he gives his deposition, and we move on. I expect the country's getting pretty tired of this thing, but, you know, we'll go through with it, and it'll probably end up having a trial, and we'll move on with everything else.
You really believe there will be a trial?
I think it. I can't say I really believe it, but I say it's an increasing possibility every day that goes by. And I don't lament the possibility, but be there, and we'll deal with it, and we'll do fine.
Well, Ralph Reed, let me ask you: is the country getting sick and tired of this whole Paula Jones case?
Well, I think the reality is that Clinton has been able to largely dodge this bullet because he's the beneficiary. I think the accidental beneficiary, but nevertheless the beneficiary of a strong economy, of a balanced budget. I think, however, Wolf, that the timing could not be more unfortunate for the president. He'd like to be focusing on the State of the Union, Medicare, child care, education. The reality is he's going to be dealing with 3 or 4 days of headlines about a sexual harassment lawsuit. That's never good news, no matter who you are, whether you're running for president or running for Congress.
He makes a valid point, James.
Well, first of all, the president, or Clinton, as Mr. Reed calls him, I refer to the president as the president. I think that he can deal with a deposition. He's able to answer questions and focus on everything else, and I think that he will be really focused on the State of the Union. I think that he is going to take that podium as probably one of the most popular presidents in American history, and for the reason that people understand that the country, the crime rate is down, the economy is up, the president's delivered on any number of his promises. They see exciting new things coming out as president. I think that contrary to the desires of Mr. Reed and other right-wing Republicans, he's going to deliver a brilliant State of the Union address, and it's going to be one that the president's going to have to support the American people.
Well, Ralph Reed, it is true that the president for 5 years now has faced all sorts of problems, scandals, including this Paula Jones case, but his popularity numbers are still very high. He was reelected. Gallup poll says he's the most admired person in the world as far as Americans are concerned.
Well, there's no doubt about the fact, and by the way, James, I'm a mainstream conservative Republican, but in any event, there's no doubt about the fact that Bill Clinton is the Energizer Bunny of American politics. I mean, he's the Rocky Balboa. You knock him down, he keeps getting up, he's on the ropes, he bounces back. But my view is, Wolf, that his personal popularity doesn't transfer any longer to the Democratic Party. It won't transfer to their candidates in 1998 and 2000. The president's popularity was high in the fall of 1997, and they lost the New York mayoralty, the New Jersey governorship, and the Virginia governorship, all in the same year for only the second time in this century. I think they're going to lose seats in the House and Senate, and I think Bill Clinton will be the last Democratic president for a long, long time. So, yeah, I concede he's personally popular. I can't find anywhere down the ticket where it really transfers.
Well, what do you say about that?
Well, first of all, let's have the elections, and I think that, you know, there's a long time between 1998. I mean, the Republican Party is now identifying Medicare with the Titanic. We think it's a superb program. I guarantee you we're going to be talking a lot about that in 1998. Their view, it's a Titanic, it's a sinking ship. Our view, it's one of the most successful programs that's ever been instituted, and I think the president's trying to expand it. They want to constrict it.
The point that the president's popularity is not translating into popularity for other Democrats.
But 1998, we're going to find out. Historically, the president's party loses seats in 1998. Mr. Reid is predicting that there'll be massive Republican victories in 1998. I would just go out there and let these people predict all of this. I think we'll go out, we'll fight the elections, and we'll see. I think we'll do fine, but I'm not going to make any bold predictions here in January. I'm going to wait and see what happens. But I think right now, the turf is very good for Democrats, and I've been calling around and talking on the phone. I think people are excited about the president's budget. I think they're excited about his proposals, and I think a lot of people, frankly, excited about some of the Republican reaction to these proposals.
Well, let me change the subject with Ralph Reed for a second. The Republican Party has this problem that some conservative Republicans want a plank in the GOP that would bar the National Party from giving money to any Republicans who would favor a woman's right to have this late-term abortion procedure known as partial birth abortion.
Right.
Do you believe the Republican Party, as a national party, should have that litmus test in its clauses?
Well, let me respond to that, but let me first of all make a correction. I'm not predicting massive Republican gains in '98. I think there's a possibility of somewhere between 8 and 15 seats in the House and 2 to 4 in the Senate. I don't disagree with James, by the way, that we're going to have a very level playing field in '98. I just want to be on the record on that.
Okay.
Secondly, with regard to the Republican National Committee resolution that'll be coming up, I guess, next week at their meeting in Palm Springs, I don't know what's going to happen with the resolution, Wolf, but this is a procedure. Let's make it clear. They're not talking about abortion. They're talking about partial birth abortion, where the child is 2/3 of the way delivered. Everything except the child's skull is outside the birth canal, and then it is systematically executed with the surgical equivalent of a knitting needle. This procedure has been condemned by the AMA, by former Surgeon General C. Everett Koop, by the Vatican, by the Pope, by Billy Graham. And I think for the Republican Party to take a position that they don't support infanticide and they would prefer that their candidates not do so is a reasonable mainstream position. It's supported by the vast majority of Republicans and, frankly, by the majority of Democrats.
So do you think the party should support that plank?
Well, I think that the party should definitely chide those Republicans and encourage those Republicans that have not supported the ban on that procedure to do so. Absolutely. I think it's a winning position.
All right, even if it means Rudy Giuliani or Christine Todd Whitman or other so-called moderate Republicans would no longer be eligible to get money from the national...
Well, I think that Christy Todd Whitman, Rudy Giuliani, Bill Weld, and other candidates of that nature are going to be very well funded. They're going to be able to raise funds. But I think what it really boils down to, Wolf, is there are an awful lot of people out there that have been writing $10 and $15 checks to the party who want to make sure that the party is taking a principled stand when it comes to an issue that they believe isn't a matter of abortion. It's a matter of infanticide. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, Democrat of New York, has called it that. As I said, I think it's a mainstream position.
All right, well, let's move on to ask James Carville about the year 2000. I know that you're looking ahead. Bob Kerrey this week hired a national political director. He seems to be getting ready to at least think about throwing his hat in the ring. Who's going to challenge? Who's going to be the most serious threat to Al Gore for the Democratic nomination?
Well, I've been around these things long enough to know that no one, and I think the vice president understands that, no one is given these things. You have to fight for them. I think in the end the vice president will win. But look, Senator Kerry is a dear friend of mine. He's going to be a heck of a candidate. Senator Bradley, another dear friend of mine, he's going to be a heck of a candidate. Reverend Jackson may run. Representative Gephardt is, and people that we don't know. I say and I believe that there will be 4 or 5 Democrats running for president in 2000 have to be taken seriously. I think there'll be 6 or 7 Republicans on Ralph's sides that will run and take.
Let's ask Ralph who the main Republican threats to the Democrats are going to be.
Well, I think, Wolf, you know, we've really got an embarrassment of riches. I mean, it's probably the strongest Republican field for president.
Give me some names of who you like.
Well, I think, obviously, Steve Forbes probably had the best 1997. He's got a great message, and he'll clearly be well-funded. I think George W. Bush, assuming he's reelected in Texas, and that looks like a very safe bet today, I think he'll be very formidable. Jack Kemp, Dan Quayle, Lamar Alexander, Elizabeth Dole, should she decide to run. I think you should keep your eye on Senator John Ashcroft. I think Kasich is catching a lot of fire at the grassroots. You know, Wolf, this is...
What about Newt Gingrich?
I think it's way too early to tell. I haven't had a chance to talk to Newt about his potential prospects. If I were to bet today, in spite of all the speculation, I would say that he probably remains Speaker through 2002. But I will say this, it's the most open contest for the Republican presidential nomination since at least 1944. Anybody who tells you they know the outcome today is lying.
Okay, that's all the time we have for this segment. Thanks again to both of you. Ralph Reed for joining us from Atlanta, James Carville here in Washington. Both of you will be back, not on Inside Politics Weekend, on Inside Politics Daily and on Late Edition, but more about that later. And when we come back, Bill Schneider on why Americans are so turned off by politics. The story behind the story when we come back.
Fighting cancer is an incredible balancing act. Too much chemotherapy, you put the patient at serious medical risk. Too little chemotherapy, the tumor cell grows. You have got to get rid of the whole thing. The drugs I'm working on will treat the patient after the cancer treatment to help them bring their blood platelet numbers back up to normal. When I think about the work that I do, it makes me feel proud.
For over 7 years. Your mission will change the course of history. But first, you really have to brush your teeth. The Sonicare Sonic Toothbrush. It's 31,000 brush strokes per minute, and sonic waves gently clean between teeth and below the gum line, going where no brush has ever gone before.
You have 42,000 new messages.
Sonicare, a better kind of clean.
Check 1 2. Check. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Check. Jack, please come to the front. Thank you and good night.
To make you feel my love. Oh, I gotta spend just a little more time with you. Yeah, that's why.
Sunday on Impact.
There was a knock on the door. Mother's worst nightmare.
An Air Force plane that's killed our kids.
I had faith they would not do anything unsafe. They wouldn't do anything to hurt my child.
Impact, Sunday, 9 Eastern on CNN.
Now look for continuous livestock quotes without a delay, only on CNN FM, the first network with instant information right from the New York, NASDAQ, and American stock exchanges. Make informed investment decisions with the stock ticker in real time on CNN FM, the financial network.
Welcome back. Our senior political analyst, Bill Schneider, joins us this weekend from across the ocean in London. What are you doing in London?
You know, when I heard that the royal family had hired a pollster, I checked it out with Buckingham Palace. And you know what? It's true. The palace has commissioned a British research firm, Market and Opinion Research International, to find out how the royal family is perceived by the British public and whether the family's work suits the interests and concerns of the British people. The palace says the royal family wants to become more, quote, user-friendly. Now imagine a user-friendly queen. They're not actually doing polls, they're conducting focus group discussions. That's much more dignified. No embarrassing questions like, do you approve or disapprove the way the Queen is handling her job?
Very interesting. But the Queen isn't the only one interested in damage control, is she?
No, you know, the Queen is worried about how to communicate better with the people, and that's something that concerns American politicians as well. Among Americans right now, interest in politics is at a low ebb. Most Americans did not bother to vote in the last election. Political speakers are having trouble finding an audience. People don't seem to care very much about what's happening in Washington. Even a juicy fundraising scandal barely elicited a yawn from the American public. Why are Americans so turned off by politics right now? Let's look at the story behind the story.
Democrats must constantly remember our core values. They are our lodestar. We must be guided by them.
What I call the virtue deficit is the major problem facing the country, bigger and more important than the budget deficit.
Politicians today speak their own language, the language of ideology. It's a language most Americans don't understand or relate to. Ideology is a kind of political faith deeply rooted in the past that may have little relevance to the present. Democrats learned from the New Deal that the power of the federal government could be used to promote economic justice. They learned from the civil rights movement that the power of the federal government could be used to promote social justice. As a result, Democrats became wedded to a faith in government. They seemed to seek out new injustices so the federal government would have something to do. Republicans are just as reflexively anti-government. The Reagan Revolution worked, so why not carry it to an extreme? Every government program becomes suspect, from public schools to environmental protection. Every problem has the same solution: cut taxes. Make government smaller, even if it means threatening the safety net or shutting the whole thing down. Ideologues believe that if something is wrong, it can't possibly work, even if it does work. Americans are pragmatists. Pragmatists believe that whatever works is right. Medicare works, so what if it's the kind of single-payer plan Republicans insist will ruin the healthcare system? Democrats are unwilling to try school vouchers because the idea offends their ideology. But vouchers may just work. Americans believe politics should be about problem solving. In Washington, too often, politics is about proving that your political faith is correct. Americans also hate the bitter partisanship that pervades Washington. Why should every issue be us against them? Too often, the objective of politics seems to be to destroy your opponent. To the public, the political battle in Washington has become a distant spectacle with little relevance to their lives, especially when times are good, as they are now. There's no market for big, bold, visionary agendas, not after the experience of President Clinton's health care plan and the Republicans' contract with America. The message coming from the American people is, leave us alone. You know, Wolf, the British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli once advised the student, if you want to go into public life, you must know two things. You must know yourself, and you must know the times. Well, Bill Clinton knows himself, and after a bitter learning experience his first 2 years in office, he came to know the times. Clinton is giving Americans what they want right now: small agenda politics, solutions, not ideology. And that's why he is the most popular and successful politician in America today.
Okay. Bill Schneider from London, as usual. Brilliant analysis. Thanks for all the great work that you did on Inside Politics Weekend. And of course, we'll be seeing you on the daily Inside Politics once you make that flight back to the United States. Thanks again. And when we come back, animal instincts.
The New York Times compared balancing the budget to the fall of the Berlin Wall. We've expanded Medicare, and I get to do socks and buddy.
All the details in our political roundup. Next.
Fighting cancer is an incredible balancing act. Too much chemotherapy, you put the patient at serious medical risk. Too little chemotherapy, the tumor cell grows. You have got to get rid of the whole thing. At my company, the drugs I'm working on will treat the patient after the cancer treatment to help them bring their blood platelet numbers back up to normal. Hematologists like me, I have to always be thinking about the consequences of many chemotherapies on the blood system. When we get a letter from a mom whose kid was suffering from very painful infections and that was alleviated with the use of one of our drugs, it's extremely moving and it makes me feel proud.
An important message from James Lee Witt, Director, Federal Emergency Management Agency.
As director of FEMA, I've seen the suffering floods cause. I've seen homes underwater. I've seen everything people own washed away. And I've seen the anguish on their faces, especially when they find out that their homeowner's insurance doesn't cover flood damage. When heavy rains saturate the ground, anyone can suffer a flood. Only flood insurance covers you for flood damage. Fortunately, it's available from FEMA's National Flood Insurance Program. It takes 30 days before policies go into effect. So it's important to buy flood insurance now. Do something for yourself and your family before it's too late. Get flood insurance today. The National Flood Insurance Program. We can't replace your memories, but we can help you build new ones. Please call the toll-free number on your screen or your insurance agent today.
Time now for our political roundup. We begin in the Big Apple.
My time outside elective office has only deepened my sense of what is needed at the centers of national decision.
It's official. Geraldine Ferraro, former Democratic vice presidential candidate and co-host of CNN's Crossfire, is giving up her time on the tube for a chance at a New York Senate seat. First up, the Democratic primary. But she couldn't resist a shot at the man she hopes will be her real opponent, Republican Senator Al D'Amato.
I believe this high office requires more than being Senator Pothole. It demands a genuine, continuing commitment to repair the holes in our social fabric and to chart a road into the future.
Our photo op of the week, a tango for the first couple on a Caribbean beach, turned into an uncomfortable dance with journalists over the issue of presidential privacy.
Do you feel your privacy was invaded, and where should the press draw the line, sir?
The answer to the first question is yes. The answer to the second question is that's why we have a First Amendment. You get to decide the answer to the second question.
Press Secretary Mike McCurry wasn't happy.
There are plenty of great pictures from the president on that trip without people hiding in bushes.
Back in Washington, another moment for the history books. The first on-camera meeting between Socks and Buddy. Not off to a good start, but the president says they're making progress. Checking our political scorecard for 2000, in New Hampshire at least, Oliver North, who's heading to the Granite State for a speech to the Christian Coalition.
If you've got that kind of support out and around America, it does make you wonder how much more there might be for some other effort in the future.
Out, Vermont's Democratic Governor Howard Dean, who raised eyebrows recently when he suggested he's thinking about the White House. Didn't take long. Dean now says no thanks to a presidential run. Paula Jones has a date at the White House. The former Arkansas state employee who's suing President Clinton for sexual harassment is expected to show up next Saturday for his scheduled deposition, bringing him face to face with his accuser. The case heads to trial this May.
I regret the pain that this matter has caused my wife and my children and my parents and my family.
Former Housing Secretary Henry Cisneros pleaded not guilty this week to concealing payments to former mistress Linda Jones. Jones showed up at the arraignment. She's also charged in the case, which is scheduled for trial in November.
Because he had had such a rich life, Sonny's interest was getting things done and getting people to work together.
Finally, Washington and the rest of the country said goodbye this week to Sonny Bono, entertainer, mayor of Palm Springs, and congressman. Bono died in a skiing accident in California at the age of 62. His colleagues say he will be missed. His fans will have him to remember for all time.
Good night, everybody. God bless you.
And just ahead, I'll take a trip to the Monocle with Mark Russell.
The first great adventure of the year.
Remember the Alamo?
Chris Christopherson, Tom Skerritt, and Scott Bairstow. 2 for Texas. See it for the first time anywhere, Sunday, January 18th at 8 on TNT.
You have been asleep for over 7 years. Your mission will change the course of history. But first, you really have to brush your teeth. The Sonicare Sonic Toothbrush. It's 31,000 brush strokes per minute, and Sonic Waves gently clean between teeth and below the gum line, going where no brush has ever gone before.
You have 42,000 new messages.
Sonicare, a better kind of clean.
When you trade online with DLJ Direct, you're awakening the resources of Donaldson, Lufkin, and Jenred, a Wall Street powerhouse. You have research on 80 different industries and access to DLJ's IPOs. The power of Wall Street is now in your power. Trade up. DLJ Direct.
Welcome back to Inside Politics Weekend. Joining me now at the Monocle this weekend, as he's done every weekend, our favorite political comedian, Mark Russell.
Thank you very much, Will. Thank you. I'm going to miss doing this. One of the reasons is from now on when I come to the Monocle, I'm going to have to bring money. I want to congratulate you on turning down the job as spokesperson for Archel Daniel Midland. As you know, the job will now go to their second choice, David Brinkley, who will be the Colonel Sanders of the soy burger, proving that ethics and beans are one in the same. Now, speaking of ethics, we learned this week that the IRS will be auditing the taxes of Paula Corbin Jones. The White House says this is just a random audit, could have been anybody, and besides, she was asking for it. Also this week, the trial of the alleged Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, is going on. Some people say that he's insane. I don't think so, but he could be stupid. For example, instead of, as was reported, he attempted to hang himself with his underwear. Wouldn't it be simpler just to mail a letter bomb to himself? Now, in the time that we are living in, where so many people here on Capitol Hill are saying that politics isn't fun anymore, we saw the example of Sonny Bono, who just put to lie that whole theory. I mean, he had a good time, and at his funeral this week, it was noted that life can certainly take some unexpected turns. For example, can you imagine if 10 years ago some psychic had said that in 10 years, President Bill Clinton would offer condolences to Congressman Sonny Bono, and the people would have said, Bill Clinton will be president? Wolf.
Mark Russell. As you know, that's all the time we have for this week, and in fact, this is our last show.
Yeah.
You've been great.
We tried to knock off Seinfeld, but what are you going to do?
Well, you know, this was better, and one of the reasons because of you. Thanks, Mark Russell, for joining us every weekend.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have. When we come back, we'll be doing Late Edition. I'll be doing that show every Sunday, starting a week from this Sunday at 12 noon Eastern. This time slot starting next weekend, our media affairs program, Reliable Sources, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget, the daily Inside Politics, not going away. It's going to be at a new time slot, 5 p.m. Eastern. You'll still, of course, be able to catch me covering the White House. It will never be dull. I'll always be here. Thanks again for joining us. That's all the time we have.